And all. My heartiest welcome to everyone in this golden evening. I'm Satyapriya, research scholar at Wings. We already have seen that 1 year exciting journey of In Tandem Club, and this is the second In Tandem meet of this year. Previous year we covered most of the topics, so today we're going to explore Jnanpith Award prize winning story. And let me have the privilege to call Mr. Soumyaneel to give his presentation.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. Hello.
Yes, Soumya.
Yeah, sorry. I thought I wasn't audible. Yeah. Is my screen visible?
Not
I'm
yet.
sorry. Is my screen visible? Okay.
Not yet. Not yet.
Is it visible now?
Yeah, now yes. Now,
Okay.
now
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Okay. Is the slide visible for you all?
Yes.
Okay. So I shall start. Uh, Good evening, everyone. I am Soumyaneel Dasgupta. I am an MPhil scholar from the Department of Comparative Literature, Jadavpur University. Today, with respect to the theme of today's symposium, the prize-winning story, I would be speaking on Tarashankar Bandyopadhyay's Ganodevata, which won the Jnanpith Award in 1966. The title of my paper is Mapping the Indian Village as a Site of Change, Class Struggle and Social Transition in Ganodevata. In this paper, I will be looking into Ganodevata as a document of social history and contemporary class struggle, the transition from one era to another that the Bengali rural life had undergone, the nuances of class, caste, and gender in the novel, and how Tarashankar, with his literary treatment, imbibes in the subaltern the agency to write their own history. First, a few words on the author and the text. Tarashankar Bandyopadhyay was an Indian novelist who wrote in Bengali. His famous literary works include Jalsaghar, Arogya Niketan, Choitali Ghurni et al., and of course Ganodevata, which is the subject of our discussion today. For his contributions, Tarashankar was awarded the Robindra Puraskar, the Sahitya Academy Award, and the Padma Shri and Padma Bhushan by the Government of India. The novel Ganodevata was first published serially in a magazine called Bharatbarsha in the early 1940s. The author had titled it as Chondi Mondop and subsequently written a sequel called Panchogram, also serially published in the same magazine. The two novels were collectively known as Ganodevata, but later Chondi Mondop was published as Ganodevata in 1942. And today, when we talk about Ganodevata, it is this remodeled version of Chondi Mondop. The author had written in the preface that he had felt the need to completely change his writing when it was published as a novel. So, what was published serially in the Bharatbarsha magazine and what came out as a novel called Ganodevata are essentially two entirely different things. That I'm sorry, am I still audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. The time period of the novel, Ganodevata, is set in India of the early 1920s. There is the mention of World War I and the subsequent inflation, skyrocketing of food prices, and black marketing of essential commodities. It is also mentioned that when the events of the novel are happening, the non-cooperation movement had just ended. The Swarajya Party had emerged as a key political force, and the demand for complete independence from the British Raj was rapidly gaining momentum. Now, coming to the background, Ganodevata is set in rural Bengal in the adjoining villages of Kalipur, Shibpur, and Konkona at the bank of the Mayurakhi River in Birbhum. All the characters in Ganodevata are from the rural setting and they represent certain prototype occupations and social sections of the Bengali village. There are farmers, both rich and poor, the village doctor, oppressive moneylenders, blacksmith, carpenter, poor Dalit laborers, the teacher running the village school, and so on. Apart from the human characters, the Chondi Mandap of the village is also given so much prominence in the narrative that it almost becomes a separate character. The Chondi Mandap is a traditional structure in a Bengali village where religious rituals are conducted, but which also become the stage for important cultural events of the village. It is also the meeting place for the influential people of the village when they ponder and debate on disputes and confer punishments. The Chondi Mandap represents the fabric of a bygone era when the traditional social structure and political order of the village was still intact. At this point, one is inclined to fall back on Raymond Williams and his concept of residual in literature. The Chondi Mandap is the residual that becomes the driving force of narrative action in Ganodevata. Now, I will just briefly recap the plot. Ganodevata deals with a period of socio-political upheaval in the Bengali rural life. The traditional way of life is slowly being dismantled as a consequence of new economic systems, changing patterns of social life, new ideas of morality, and the influence of political events like World War I and the struggle for independence. Ganodevata chronicles the strenuous and ultimately futile struggle to preserve the old order, the class conflicts in the village society, the dire poverty of the subaltern who are oppressed and exploited at every turn, and the efforts of a few good people to work for the development and empowerment of the village. The narrative of Ganodevata is heavily influenced by Tarashankar's own experience of living in the villages of Birbhum and of participating in the freedom struggle for which he was briefly imprisoned. The title, the Bengali word Ganodevata, if it is translated literally, it would mean the god of the people in English. The title could be interpreted in two ways. It could refer to a secular construction of divinity that Tarashankar posits to counter bigotry and religious prejudice that has always been a significant factor in rural Bengal. The arrival of the British did alter things, but discrimination, superstitions, and casteism continued to persist as before. The god of Ganodevata exists to serve the people, to fight for their basic needs as food, clothing, and housing, to survive against the collective oppression of zamindars, moneylenders, and the British government. Survival is one of the most recurring themes of this novel, and Tarashankar's message seems to be that for people who has to struggle for every second of their existence, the people's god is the only divinity they could put faith in, the god of all subaltern people, transcending religion, caste, and community. One could find similarities between Tarashankar's God of the People and Bibhutibhushan Bandyopadhyay's God of the Road that he constructed in Pother Pachali, a novel also constructed in the poverty-ridden landscape of rural Bengal. The title could also be interpreted as the juncture in history when people become or are forced to become gods through their individual and collective efforts to transcend the ordinary. In Ganodevata, when the cholera pandemic hits the village, the people, spearheaded by the village teacher Debu Ghosh, pull off a near miracle in saving the village from complete ruination. Debu Ghosh alone took on the rich moneylender Srihari Pal, who is the pantomime villain in the novel, the zamindars, the corrupt police officials, and so on. He alone fought against the collective might of a system that was cruel, unjust, and rotten to the core, and he survived. Debu Ghosh is just one of the many characters in the novel who, in brief moments, through their sheer willpower and willingness to fight for a just cause, become the people's god or Ganodevata. Now we will explore some of the motifs in the novel. First, Ganodevata as a document of social history. As Sheikh Ehsan Karim points out in his article, Tarashankar Bandyopadhyay as a modern historian in Ganodevata, Tarashankar was not just a novelist but also a historian. He faithfully chronicled the crumbling of old institutions and the emergence of a new industrial economy in the early part of the 20th century, one that led to far-reaching cultural changes and political upheaval in the villages. Thus, Ganodevata is not a speculative work of fiction, but the embodiment of social, cultural, and political memory of contemporary times. Ganodevata does not make value judgments on whether the old self-sufficient village economy was better than the new individual-centric economic system. It simply depicts things as they are. The novel posits the idea that irrespective of the system, the subaltern would continue to be exploited until and unless they rise in rebellion and take control of their own destiny. Tarashankar is not a fatalist. Throughout the novel, he has argued for affirmative action. In the closing chapter of the novel, when the exiled rebel Jatin is being led away from the village, his only saving grace that he had helped in the regeneration of the village and its people, and his good work would continue through Debu Ghosh and others. I quote in Bengali from the novel, তাহার আনন্দ তাহার সান্ত্বনা এই যে সে তাহার কর্তব্য করিয়াছে, বন্দি জীবনে এই পল্লীর মধ্যে দেবুর জাগরণে সে সাহায্য করিয়াছে, এমনি করিয়াই নূতন কালের ধর্ষণ প্রচেষ্টা ব্যর্থ হইবে, মানুষ বাঁচিবে, ভয় নাই, ভয় নাই, unquote. A rough translation in English would be this: his happiness, his consolation is that he has done his duty. While exiled in this village, he has contributed in the awakening of Devu. In this way, the destructive efforts of the new era would fail. Man will survive. Do not fear. Do not fear. Now, coming to the Bengali village as a site of change and the social transition to a new era, Ganadevata opens with a minor turbulence in the tranquility of the village life. The blacksmith Aniruddha Karmakar and the carpenter Girish Sutrodhar opening a shop in the big city and hence being unable to render their services to the village folk. This creates a mini crisis in the village, and a meeting is called in the Chandi Mandap to punish Aniruddha and Girish and bring them in line. However, it is soon apparent that this minor incident is reflective of a deeper phenomenon, a complete breakdown of the traditional system. Hence, the meeting at Chandi Mandap is unable to stamp its authority on the village as it used to. Aniruddha and Girish continue to snub the village. Soon the Barbars and the foster brothers Soon the Barbars and the foster mothers start demanding immediate cash payment. The cobbler goes on strike. The village dump-yard is occupied by people from other villages. In short, the entire economic system breaks down. The Chandi Mandap, which represents the traditionalist section of the village, tries to preserve the system, but the rot had set in deep. Even the traditionally powerful zamindars have become weaklings. Under the new order, prominent family lineage and social prestige ceases to be the dominant factor, and it is money and money alone that determines the hierarchy in the society. Thus, on the ruins of the feudal order, capitalist modernity asserted its strong presence. Srihari with his shrewd business sense and calculative attitude, would be the dominant force in this new system, and characters like Daroka Choudhury, who were once respected due to their esteemed family lineage, are soon consigned to the back pages of history. The old order does not give up without a fight, but even that fight is mostly tinged with a resigned understanding that things will change inevitably. We can see an instance of this nostalgic sigh for the glory days of the old in Debu Ghosh's ruminations in the novel. I quote, সেকালে যেসব মানুষ এই সমাজ গড়িয়াছিল, এই সমাজ শাসন করিত, এ সমাজকে ভালো করিয়া জানিত, বুঝিত, সেসব মানুষই আর নাই। সে শিক্ষাও নাই, সে দীক্ষাও নাই, সে দৃষ্টিও নাই। এসব মানুষ আরেক জাতের মানুষ, আরেক ধাতের মানুষ, মানুষের নামে অমানুষ, unquote. A rough translation in English would be, in the bygone era, the people who made this society and ruled it, they knew it well. These people are no longer there. That education, that vision, those morals, they are no longer there. These people are of a different type altogether. These people are actually inhumans. The politics of identity in Ganadevata manifests itself in class, caste, and gender hierarchies. The continuous class struggle between the haves and the have-nots is depicted in the novel through the sheer poverty that plagues majority of the population. The incessant oppression that the poor people had to face, including a high tax rate, torture in the hands of the moneylenders, and exploitation by rich businessmen like Srihari Pal, who once burned down an entire neighborhood of laborers. Sometimes the subaltern strikes back, as evidenced in the aforementioned instance where the ironsmith, carpenter, barbers, and laborers refuse to work under the current status quo. Thus, the rebellion started by Aniruddha Karmakar and Girish Sutrodhar against Srihari Pal and his likes can be viewed as class struggle waged by the working class against the feudal lords and the bourgeois. Caste hierarchies are a very significant part of the narrative universe of Ganadevata. The Dalits, referred to as Harijans, inhabit a different space where they have their separate neighborhood and even a separate Khap Panchayat system. These Dalits were mainly from Bayan and Baudi caste, and while some of them derived their livelihood from the village carcasses, many others were the most exploited farmers in the village, as found in the following reference from the novel. I quote, এক প্রান্তে গ্রামের হরিজন চাষিরাও দাঁড়াইয়া দর্শক হিসেবে, ইহারাই গ্রামের শ্রমিক চাষি, অসুবিধার 12 আনা এদের ভোগ করিতে হয় ইহাদিগকেই, unquote. Translation, the Horijan farmers of the village stood in one side as spectators. These are the working farmers of the village. They have to face the significant part of the difficulties. But while there is the incessant attempt to maintain the sanctity of the Varnashram system, The transition to a new social order meant disruption in traditional caste structures as well. Thus, we find Srihari Pal becomes Srihari Ghosh, which is a higher caste, through the sheer might of his accumulated wealth. We also find Rameshwar Chatterjee, a high-born Brahmin, indulging in business with carcasses, which is traditionally the territory of Dalits in Indian society. Now coming to the women of Ganodevata, there is a distinct duality in how Tarashankar frames empowered femininity. There are two significant women in the novel, Durga and Padma, and they could not have been more different in terms of physique, demeanor, and how they articulate themselves. Padma is reserved, silently tolerates the beatings of her husband, and conforms to the stereotype of the passive Indian wife. Durga, conversely, is exuberant, ran away from her husband's house, has many lovers, and tactfully utilizes her physicality to emasculate men and gain favors from them. No masculine character in the novel is able to subjugate Durga. Durga earns her livelihood through prostitution, and while this raises constant social objections about her character, she does not look upon it as a humiliating profession, but an empowering one. In times of crisis, Durga uses her money and influential contacts to save the village, while Padma shakes off her submissive garb and uses her wise judgment and common sense to defeat Srihari Pal and rescue those close to her. Thus, through seemingly opposing qualities, Tarashankar constructs the identity of the empowered Bengali village woman of the 20th century. Tarashankar structured Ganodevata in the form of a traditional omniscient narrator who is observing the events in the village from a distance. But he also experimented with form by frequently interrupting the narrative with discourses that the omniscient narrator embarks on. For example, when the story is focused on Srihari Pal being a completely different person while doing religious rituals, suddenly the narrative is interrupted by an elaborate discussion on how people who earnestly cry during religious rituals indulge in injustice and corruption the moment the rituals are over. Tarashankar also uses the stream of consciousness technique to lay bare the inner conflicts and contradictions of characters. So we view every action in the context of his motivation. For example, Dr. Jagannath writing a letter to the magistrate apparently to help poor farmers, but we know from the exploration of his psyche that his real intention is to get on good terms with the magistrate and become a member of the union. In conclusion, Tarashankar, in writing Ganodevata, explores the plight of the subaltern with an empathy that few had managed. Despite a pessimistic ending, the novel does not end in a pessimistic note. It ends with the faith in the power of the people to brave all odds and emerge victorious, with the hope that in the coming days, the oppressed, the disenfranchised, and the people without a voice will finally control their own destiny. I quote from the novel, "সে সকল বাধাকেই অতিক্রম করিবে, আনন্দময়ী প্রাণবতী সৃষ্টি অফুরন্ত তাহার শক্তি, সে তাহার জীবন বিকাশের সকল প্রতিকূল শক্তিকে ধ্বংস করিবে, ভারতের জীবন প্রবাহ বাধা বিঘ্ন ঠেলিয়া আবার ছুটিবে." Unquote. Translation: It will surpass all obstacles. Its power is happiness and full of life, full of creativity. It will demolish all opposing forces that will try to stem its vitality. The life spirit of India will overcome all difficulties and flow ceaselessly. Here is a list of references that I used to write this paper. And thank you all for listening to my talk, and I look forward to your questions and comments. Thank you.
Satyapriya, please introduce the keynote speaker.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Thank you, Soumyaneel. Let me have the privilege to introduce our keynote speaker. Dr. Padma V Mckertich is currently Assistant Professor in Department of English, Stella College, and she received her PhD from University of Madras on Indian fiction in English and Bhashas in 1980s, and was published by Orient Blackspan as Fiction as Window. Her articles on areas such as Indian literature and science and Bhakti studies have appeared in a number of national and international journals. She has also translated S. Ramakrishnan Tamil play Aravan into English and co-edited a collection of translations titled Four Tamil Plays and an anthology of essays on interfaith dialogue titled My Faith and Others. In 2018, she underwent training in peace building and conflict transformation from Mindanao and Peace Building Institute as a fellow of the United Board for Christian Higher Education in Asia. Her teaching and research interests include Indian literature, critical theory, Bhakti studies, and science and literature. Welcome, ma'am.
Um, Good evening, and thank you, Satyapriya, for that introduction. And many, many thanks, Maria, for calling me. Uh, and Soumyaneel, it was a pleasure listening to you. Not least because you quoted in Bengali, and it's lovely to hear the sound of another language, other Indian language, something that we don't hear too often in Chennai here. It also kind of brings out something that I think many of us who are working in India studies and Indian literatures are trying to move towards this, trying to break the boundaries between languages. Thank you for that. And Your presentation was something that actually in many ways helped, I think will help me when I'm trying to look at the award, generally, because many of the things that you brought out are things that will fit into a lot of things that I would like to discuss. That said, I would also like to mention that a little bit of the material that I have used for this presentation is from a couple of interviews that I conducted at the Bharatiya Gyanpith quite a few years ago, which means that it might be slightly outdated, but I don't really think so, because the issues that the director of the Bharatiya Gyanpith spoke about at that time seem quite pertinent even today. So that said, I will just give me a minute. I'll present my screen and please let me know if you can. Yeah, the screen is visible, isn't it?
Yes, Padma. Yes.
Yeah. So this is the Bharatiya Jnanpith Award. The two pictures that you see there, on one side you have the statue of the goddess Saraswati, the goddess of learning and wisdom and knowledge. That is the that is what is given uh, as part of the Jnanpith Award. What you see on the other side is the logo of the Bharatiya Jnanpith Foundation. So the Bharatiya Jnanpith Award is one of the awards given by the Bharatiya Jnanpith Foundation. It's by far the most visible of the awards that they give, but it's not the only one. And this is how they would like it to be called. Like you have Sahitya Academy as India's Academy of Letters. Bharatiya Jnanpith calls itself India's seat of wisdom and knowledge. I'm sorry, knowledge and wisdom. Um, which brings us to two or three important words that are very loaded today. One, of course, is the term India itself. And as students of literary studies, we know that we recognize that when we say India, we are talking about a non-monolithic, a heterogeneous construct, an heterogeneous nation. Knowledge and wisdom seem, from today's perspective, a little humanistic, and the tendency is to not see humanism as something very favorable. Nevertheless, I hope we can look a little more, we can engage with these in a little more interesting way. So this is a little bit of the history of the Bharatiya Jnanpith Foundation. Now, this was instituted in 1961, so it was almost more than a decade after India won independence that the Bharatiya Jnanpith was instituted, and it was started by a couple, a Jain couple, and this also is related to the fact that Bharatiya Jnanpith funds a lot of research on Jain studies and publishes a lot of the outcome of the research from their publication center. Uh, what I have given as objective is their is from their website today. So their primary objective is to felicitate the best literary creation in India. The emphasis is entirely mine, and it chooses this one literary creation from among all the languages that are recognized by Schedule 8 of India's Constitution. So Schedule 8 of India's Constitution now recognizes 22 languages, which means that the award that wins the book, or the book earlier and now the writer who win the award, have been chosen from among not 22 but 18, because if you won the award 1 year, you cannot win it for the next 2 years, that particular language. So 2 languages automatically get left out. So initially the award was given to a book, which is why we had today's presentation. Jnanpith was considered the best novel that won the award. But from 1982 onwards, it was given for lifetime achievement. I'm very sorry. There is a spelling error over there. The quotation is for outstanding contribution, not for outstanding contribution. Please pardon me. So from 1982 onwards, it was given for lifetime achievement. And this lifetime, this is the standard wording in the citation: for outstanding contribution to Indian literature. And in brackets, you're told in English, in Tamil, in Gujarati, in Marathi, in Bengali, or any of those. And the corpus of work of that writer for the past 10 years is usually taken into consideration. Jnanpith was an exception because there was a long period of time. But remember that Jnanpith got the award almost as soon as just 5 years after the award was instituted. So this is something that the director of the Bharatiya Jnanpith was talking about, the problems. How are you going to select one text or even one writer from among so many writers? What is the basis of comparison? Because this is how he put it. There are different literary traditions. So how do you compare the beauty of a rose with the fragrance of a mogra flower? So the question that he's asking us is, he's asking us to consider is, when you have a novel, say, or a poem in Tamil, which has its own literary tradition, which may be a little unfamiliar for readers of another language. How do you compare something in Tamil, which has obvious resonances with the Tamil literary tradition, to, say, a Bengali poet, which has a completely different literary tradition? Are there aspects of comparison? Clearly, the Bharatiya Jnanpith believes that there are points of comparison, and that is why the award is given. This is what is given in the award. Today, it is a cash prize of 11 lakh rupees and a statue of Goddess Saraswati. And these are the other awards given by the foundation. So you have the Gyan Garima Award, which is, I think, one of the few awards that stipulates that the writer being considered be above 75 years of age. So the understanding is that they have made a substantial contribution to the literary culture of their language, always assuming that they started writing early. So if someone has started writing when they are 74, obviously this wouldn't work. Murti Devi Award is given to a living writer. Jnanpith can be given posthumously. Murti Devi Award is given, Gyan Garima can also be given posthumously. Murti Devi cannot be. The condition here is that the work be contemplative and intellectual. So it need not necessarily be a novel or a piece of creative writing. The third award, of course, is the Navlekhan Award, which is given only to a young writer. This is their way of boosting young talent, especially only in Hindi. This is only in Hindi. So at this point, I think we would already have recognized that there is a very strong North Indian slant to the Jnanpith Award. Definitely is there, but not all Jnanpith awardees have been from the North. It's kind of moved all over the all over the country. So very briefly, a look at the selection process, so that once we have a rough idea about the selection process, we can move into critiquing the selection process. So the first step, the Jnanpith Foundation sends out proposal forms to, they have a mailing list. And the mailing list usually includes what they call lovers of literature. There are academics who've been involved with the Jnanpith Foundation, many who have translated their works from one language to another. A lot of critics, reviewers who publish periodically and often in well-known journals and newspapers. They also put out these forms in. They used to put out these forms in major newspapers, but now, since most of us have gone online, the forms are available online. The proposal forms are available online. They are written both in Hindi and in English. What you see is a screenshot of the English part. So if you can see, there are a few details that you have to give. You also have to give details of any translations that have been made into Hindi or English. They're not looking at other translations, and any other comments that you would like to add. So this form is available online right now. It does not open because once they start the process, the form will be open. So you can go to the Bharati Jnanpith website, and the form will open. It's a PDF that will open. So what happens once the selection, once the proposal forms are filled up and sent, the foundation has all the proposal forms, and then they follow what we can see is a two-tier system of selection. So at the first stage of the next step, all the proposal forms are divided according to language, and they are sent to what is called the Bhasha Samiti, or they like to call it a language advisory committee. So there is one Bhasha Samiti for each of the languages recognized by Schedule 8 of India's constitution. So there will be Bhasha Samitis usually consist of 3 members. They may be writers, academics, critics, or some famous person who is involved with literature in some way or the other. So the committee meets at a stipulated time, and they, among all the names that come for that language, the Bhasha Samiti can decide on sending maximum of 3 names to the next level. So sometimes they may take 1, sometimes 2, sometimes 3. The interesting thing is, if the Bhasha Samiti feels that any name is left out that they feel should have been considered, they can also add. Now, what is even more interesting for us is that, remember, the work has to have been published within the last 10 years. Interestingly, although it is not clearly stipulated, works that have been in circulation only for 2 years are usually not taken into consideration. The reason that is given is that we don't really know the impact of the work. Now, this is interesting because it tells us that one of the things that the Bharati Jnanpith looks for is the impact of the work. And this is quite unlike a number of international awards which give the prize to something that was published only in the last 2 years. And you would notice by now that nowhere here is a publisher part of this system, which is very interesting because international awards like the Man Booker Prize involve the publishers in a very major way. Whereas here, publishers are not at all part of the process. In some way, that takes away that problem that you would have of the publisher's vested interests coming in. But equally importantly, if you look at what the Bhasha Samiti does, is that if they have selected 3 authors, they will collect all available material on all these authors, which means criticism, interviews, reviews. Now, I believe they also collect online material and give the links. Earlier, they would actually print out a lot of material and keep it available for it to be sent to the next level. So the jury does not actually depend on, they don't go only by their response to a text. they go by responses given by people belonging to different areas in the literary studies field. So they could be other authors, they could be other critics, they could be reviewers, they could be teachers. All of them have been part of the Bhasha Samitis. Now, this material, collected material, is interesting for us because anybody who's been working on Indian literature will know that now, of course, we have a lot of criticism available on individual texts and writers. But this was not always the case. There is still quite a scarcity of material, particularly theoretical material that does not heavily veer towards, Western or classical concepts. You will usually find such criticism in reviews, and sometimes you may even find it in blurbs. So this material that is collected is actually a very interesting storehouse of such criticism. And if you can get access to it, you need to go to Delhi to the office in Lodi Road to get access to it. But it's a fantastic resource for us. From here, it goes to the second stage in this step, and that is the Pravar Parishad, or what they call the Committee of Excellence or the Excellence Committee. So, like I mentioned earlier, at least two names, two languages will be left out, but that material will be kept because that material might be used in the later years. So, the rest of the names that are there, for them, even more material is now collected. So the Bhasha Samiti would have already collected material, and now the foundation works with these names to collect any more material that they can find. And then you have the committee, usually made up of 13 members, and a committee is usually headed by a prominent public person, normally associated with literature and finance. And at this meeting, which is held in Delhi in the Bharati Jnanpith office, there is a lot of debate, and we'll look at what is debated, and that will actually link very directly to the presentation of the day. And if a consensus cannot be reached, what interestingly happens is that more time is given to the committee so that the foundation can collect more material and send it to them. So this is by and large the process, and there is a big function in Delhi at which the award is formally given to the winners, right? So just a quick look at the process itself. One is that the two-tier process automatically means that the text is placed within two literary traditions. So the text is placed within the literary tradition of that language. So one of the first things we started when we discussed was how do we compare a novel written in Tamil, which has its own literary tradition, with something written in, say, Assamia or Bengali, which has a different literary tradition. So you're not immediately jumping the gun and going up there. You're comparing the text with other texts written within similar literary traditions. So you do have the idea of a language-based literary tradition within which a particular text or the works of a particular writer are placed. And at the next level, it is obviously placed within the idea of a national literature. So at that stage, there is a comparison made between works of different languages. Of course, here the question of the publisher has not arisen at all. Incidentally, Jnanpith, I will mention, there will be a slide mentioning that, but since I've come there, Jnanpith has its own publishing house, and they do translate, they do sponsor translations of the winning works, into Hindi, only Hindi. This is, I would like to compare at this stage two other prizes. One is the Sahitya Academy. Sahitya Academy, of course, gives one award for one book in each of the languages recognized by Schedule 8. So if there are 22 languages, there are 22 awards. But at the same time, Sahitya Academy also sponsors translations of works that have won the award into each of the other 21 languages. So there's actually a massive translation project within Indian languages that is taking place. And at the same time, Sahitya Academy also publishes monographs on what they call makers of Indian literature. So you have monographs on all the important writers from classical times onwards. All the books are available in the Sahitya Academy outlets, and any book fair in India, in any city in India, will have a stall. Sahitya Academy will have a stall, and the books are available over there. Like I mentioned, publishers, outside publishers, obviously are not part of the process at all. Interestingly, English is not one of the 22 recognized languages of Schedule 8 of India's constitution. So Bharatiya Jnanpith did not include English for a very, very long time. So it was only in 2004 that English was also considered, and Amitav Ghosh won that award for that year. Amitav Ghosh has won the award. Right, so this is just take a quick look at the next 3 slides. This is just a list of the winners going in reverse order. So Damodar, Mauzo and Phukan were given the award together because 2020 they could not have the Jnanpith ceremony because of the pandemic. But take a look at how almost all languages have been recognized. I mean, you have Konkani, Asamiya, Kannada, Oriya, Telugu, Marathi, Urdu, Tamil, Gujarati, Punjabi, Hindi. I'm just going backwards. Again, most of the names are familiar to us. Girish Karnad, Ali Sardar Jafri, Vasudevan Nair, Anantamurthy, Narayan Reddy, Akilan, Shivram Karanth. All of these are Amrita Preetham, Mahadevi Verma, Masti Venkatesh Iyengar, Tagre Shankar Pillai. These are all really major names in each of these languages. The first person to win was Shankara Kuru, and you have Tara Shankar Bandopadhyay there. So the awards started to be given from 1965. So one of the things that we mentioned was the idea of national literature. So the assumption here is, despite differences of literary tradition, of language, there are grounds for comparison and evaluation. And the fact that they are different languages, they are in different languages, does not mean that they cannot be compatible. And at the same time, the fact that you are comparing them does not subsume differences. So this is what the director had told us. It was a very interesting statement that he made. There is this spirit of humanism that is at its core. And he said that is what connects all the literatures in different bhashas in India. And that is what connects Indian literature to other literatures. And at the level of the Pravar Parishad, the committee of excellence, these are the aspects that are largely taken into consideration, the technique that is used. And I remember today's presentation spoke particularly about the technique. How does it represent the society of its times? What of the society does it represent? And again, the entire presentation that we heard today focused on the rural spaces in India as a site for social change. Social change, incidentally, was a major theme that a lot of writers, that a lot of minutes of the meetings keep focusing on. So when you can show that there has been a change for the better, or that there is hope for change for the better. And again, today's presentation focused on that, how the ending of the novel, gave out this hope. So these are things that are possible to discuss outside of, differences in languages, differences in culture, differences in literary traditions. But at the same time, you really don't have any Dalit writer who's won the award. We do have subaltern voices in a novel, but the novel itself is not a subaltern voice. Today's presentation was about how subaltern spaces, subaltern voices are heard in the novel. But the fact remains that the novel itself is not a subaltern voice. Uh, alongside alongside translations, Bhartiya Jnanpith also publishes a journal in Hindi, which is called it was earlier called Gyanoday. It was stopped for some time and then it was revived. Now it's called Naya Gyanoday. But it does not only include art. It's a Hindi journal. It does not only include articles on literature. It also includes opinion pieces and others on cultural events, thereby making it more of a culture studies journal. You can subscribe for it online. Uh, Earlier, I don't know when this stopped. I'm sorry, I could not find out. It used to run what is called the Jnanpith Pathak Parivar. I was part of that. I was on the mailing list for a very long time, and then it just stopped one day. When I joined, I paid a paltry sum of some 10 rupees or 12 rupees to join this. So they used to send me this would come home. It's a small printed, a print publication that tells us. It used to have one interview with some important writer in any language, and it also used to discuss some of the important literary and cultural issues. So this is by and large how the Jnanpith Foundation functions. You could always check out their website. This is it's now that everything has gone online. Everything is available there. But yeah, that's what I have to talk about. I would welcome any comments or questions. Thank you once again for listening to me, and thank you for that wonderful presentation, and thank you, Preeti, for calling me. It was a wonderful thing going back to something that I hadn't gone back to in a long time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Padma, as well as the presenter today, Soumyaneel. Yes, I think Tara Shankar, whom she has chosen to speak on, is a model writer for a number of Bengali writers, including Mahashweta Devi, who used to praise him a lot because he is the first one to have spoken about the gypsies, the so-called downtrodden people. His representation of all those people who were generally not spoken about. So perhaps every Jnanpith award winner uh, deserves that prize because he has represented not just though no Dalit writer has won a prize, I think it is a cross section of society that person has chosen to represent. So I'm happy that the presenter has chosen Tara Shankar today, and also that the Jnanpith Award, I do not know if there is politics, it is politics written today, but till then, I think for a long, long time, as they had given the prize to so-called, what do you call, people who represented all aspects of society. So happy to be part of this, and thank you, Padma, for giving us all those intricacies of the award. What the
Thank
award
you. It was
is, we
lovely to
generally
go back.
don't go into all that stuff to see what it is like. Did Soumili have any? This also I'd like to ask. Did you think there were other Bengali writers too who won it? Why did you choose to take this particular person, Soumyaneel Dasgupta?
Yeah. Sorry. Actually, I had joined from my sister's Google Meet account. Actually, my name is Soumyaneel. Like there was a
Okay.
problem with my account. So
Uh,
anyway, yeah. So when I was asked to do a presentation on a text that has won the Ganpit Award, I went through a lot of options. Many of Bengali writers were also there. There was Mahasweta Devi. There was Subhash Mukhopadhyay. But I think what like what attracted me to Ganadevata was the particular fact that like it represented a time and a space in our state as well as our country, which is probably not that much talked about, like the villages near the Mayuraki River. Very few novels has probably been written about it, and the poverty and the class struggle, and also as ma'am said, the subaltern voice. So that is probably why I was attracted to the text, and I could also have probably done with Mahashata Devi, but I preferred this for the reasons that I. Yeah.
Happy to introduce Mr. Jagannath and another academician who's joined us today, to Padma and Srilata and colleagues who are here and are regular participants in tandem. I think Sir's got some questions. He said that he was very keen on participating, or some observations to make. Yes.
Thank you so much. First of all, for considering my participation. Yes, in a way, I've been an academician, but it is a joy to participate in such an enlightened presentation. In terms of the only thing, the couple of things that I want to share is I definitely came to know much about, though I've heard about the works of Tarashankar. Today it was a wonderful presentation where I could appreciate the crux of the whole novel, and it was very nice. And when I when the presenter was talking about the interpretation of the title, it was very interesting, and I especially liked when the interpretation was made that people themselves becoming divinity or God. It was really a nice interpretation, where I think if I had to use some bit of my knowledge of Sanskrit grammar, it is Gana eva Devata, where people themselves have become God. That was a very nice thing. And thanks to Professor Dr. Padma for sharing such important information about the award. It is truly amazing that it has been done. And what I really liked of all the points is where the publisher is kept away. I think that's a very important thing, because honestly, that's a thing that I used to really look into as reading between lines. I would say, for the other awards, the pressure of the publisher and the vested interest, and I think that in a way this has kept the pedigree of this award very, very differently. So thanks for bringing that. I never knew about that, honestly. So it's a very special thing, and my respects for the award is multifold now. Though I also have this slight feeling in terms of Dalit voice, or the Dalit writers not still yet to get sort of the place that they need, and also the northern flavor, which you mentioned in the beginning, is something that I wish something can be done about that. But otherwise, I thoroughly enjoyed both the presentations. And yes, thank you so much for inviting me. I had a wonderful evening with all of you. Thanks for the opportunity, Dr. Preeti. Thank you so much.
If I may add one more thing, because you mentioned the publishers. In fact, many Indian awards do not include publishers on the jury. Sahitya Academy does not. There is
Okay.
also an award given by the Birla Foundation of India called the Saraswati Samman.
Yes,
That
there
also
is.
does not. Yeah, that also does not include publishers. In fact, they don't even include English. They say English. There are a lot of other awards in that are given for English. So they actually have a 3-tier level. So they first have a Bhasha Samiti, and then they have a Kshetra Samiti. So all the South Indian languages come together to discuss their nominees, and then it goes to the national level. So it's a slightly different process. and publishers don't play any role in any of these, which, like you said, is very refreshing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, I'm now curious to look into the book for which Amita Ghosh was awarded, because I've been trying to follow his works for some time, especially the importance he gives to history, as a subject. So probably I'll quickly go back and try to see which of his works got the award. So thank you so much. Thanks again to all of you for allowing me to be part of this wonderful event. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Padma, I did see Chemin on that list. So I was, part of our the thematic study on the prize-winning story is the translation from one genre to the other. So maybe we could think about the stories which have been made films. We can't hear you, Padma.
Yeah. Sorry, sorry about that. Yeah, I think that would be a fantastic way of looking at it, the way in which Indian cinema has used Indian novels. We speak of there is some work done on it, but I think a bulk of the work has veered towards looking at how Western cinema and Indian cinema has also used Western novels, but we have a range of films which have used Indian novels, and Chemin is one of them. Uh, Quite a few others. Just give me a minute. I'll.
In
Gujarati.
fact, uh, in fact, recent movies in Tamil, they've
Yes.
adopted a lot of novels. In fact, as early as
Asuram.
2 weeks, yeah, 2 weeks ago, there was this interview conducted through Hindu between Jay Mohan and Kamal
Yes.
Hassan.
Yes.
It,
Yes.
it was a
Exactly.
very interesting interview, and I wish all of us can watch it. It's a very interesting exchange of ideas,
Yes.
through
It was a
thoroughly
wonderful article. Yes.
professional, thoroughly professional, and yeah, especially now that the translation of Aram has happened, it is worth following.
Absolutely.
Uh, it's a good thought.
Actually, I don't know if many of us are even aware. Even an iconic film in Tamil like Tilana Mohanambal is based on a novel.
That's right. That's right.
Many of us are not. It's a surprise to a
Yes,
lot of us.
yes,
As
correct.
is Jayakanthan's Sila
Yeah,
Nerangali Sirama. Yes, exactly.
Film.
When
Yes,
I mentioned it in class, some of my students were very surprised. So I was
yeah.
wondering, but that's a
T-
wonderful idea.
yeah, Mogamul also is
Mohamul also.
Mohammed.
In,
Janaki
In
Raman.
fact, Mohamul was one of the books considered for Bharti Jnanpith, and Janaki Raman is a Jnanpith Award winner. And I think another novel by Janaki Raman has just been translated into English and has been published by OUP.
Right. Yeah, 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 yeah. A
Yes,
great person. I mean, I
absolutely.
admire his
Absolutely.
his work. Yeah.
In fact, Tagari Shivashankara Pillai's
No,
Kayar is classic.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, Preeti. It's one of my
sorry.
favorite novels,
Someone
and I'm very upset that not many people even know that Kayar exists. It's a
That's
beautiful novel, fabulous novel.
oh, that I think they all know that it is. I mean, comparable to
Yeah,
that War and Peace in its
yeah,
vast canvas and all that.
absolutely.
But it hasn't been made into a
No,
film. It is.
no.
I think it's too
Yeah.
vast.
Even if it's not made into a film, I think Tagari himself, when he received the Bhartiya Jnanpith, in fact, Bhartiya Jnanpith has come up with a very interesting book. They've compiled the acceptance speeches of all their winners. And Tagari talks about the need to write history. This was way back, but he talks there about the need to write our history our way. Not just in the Mahabharata Ramayana way, but also the subaltern
Yes,
ways that
way.
we would identify today with, say, Guha's work or any of the subaltern studies group's work. So that's also there. The Jnanpith website has a link to a lot of their publications. They are not very costly because they're not a profit making organization. They're not costly.
All the national publications are not
Yeah.
as costly.
Yes.
I'm happy you mentioned that publishers. No, today it is a rat race among the publishers as to whose publication will win the prize.
Absolutely.
So that way, I mean, that politics is still a little. I mean, I think distant in these prizes.
Right. This is for the students. One of
One,
the
sorry, one thing
no, no,
that
no, go ahead.
I wanted to definitely share about the presentation about Ganadevta. Uh, I am amazed when I look at whatever the plot or whatever was discussed. I think history repeat, right? I mean, we are seeing the same thing happening again. It's not just subject to 1920s or something. The economic forces and the sort of exploitation that is mentioned in that novel is still continuing. This is a very sad observation, of course. It's with a heavy heart that I'm sharing this, that things have not changed for better. I might sound very pessimistic, but please pardon me. But it's a very sad observation that
But
things have
he has
not changed.
started a trend which was followed by a whole lot of Bengali writers. I
Oh,
mean,
yes, ma'am.
Tara Shankar, I think Mahashweta Devi herself has written a monograph on Tara Shankar. About, I mean, how she has mentioned many places that she's been totally inspired by him, you know. Then all the other Patet Panchali and all the other movies also that we have seen, no, all think I think Bengal and Bengal was the first, and the Kerala. I think these two places where they gave importance to the social revolution.
True, true.
Maybe it was there in
Maybe
Marathi, yes, but it was not reflected that well. Maybe, I mean,
true.
suppressed it.
True. In fact, the common man, if I can use that word,
Yeah.
was greatly impacted, and it was known in the sense. But what I say is, the Aam Aadmi or the common man in these two states could appreciate it to a great extent, which I think is one of the success of communism. I would say, in a way. I'm not here trying to promote that, but it has it.
No,
Everything
no,
has
no.
its
As an
own.
ideology, it has helped a lot to, so I
Yes,
mean,
yes,
to improve
that
this kind of the sing in most of the writers of Kerala are communist in ideology. I mean, if you look,
right.
whether
Yeah,
it's O.N.V.
that,
Kurup, all those who were winners, no, they would have written in some way. Though others may
that's
not have mentioned communism, but they were actually the way they went about writing, they did that. And so also, I think that's why communism, but I think survived only in these two countries, West Bengal and Kerala.
in fact, I always admire because whatever this I don't know, it's a by point, but when you're talking about Kerala, one thing is that if there is a wonderful work of literature or non-fiction, there's a very quick translation that is available in Malayalam.
Yes,
I
yes,
remember when Malala Yusuf when
yes,
that
yes, yes.
book came, within a couple of months, if I'm not wrong,
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
available. So that's a very admirable thing, which shows the readership among the people, which is
Immediately it is trans. With
it,
I go to the
it,
Kanimera library to the Malayalam section. I was so surprised to see the most recent novels all translated into Malayalam. It is not there in the other
yes, that is
languages.
very commendable achievement, I would say, because I mean that means there is so much reading that is happening as a place. I don't know about
And whether
Bengal.
it has influenced the people or made them better, I don't know. But there's a lot of leadership. Okay,
It is a to see because otherwise regional writers do struggle a lot, in my opinion, to get their due respect because not many people. For example, when I try to speak to some people, just like I mean a couple of them about P. Janagiraman, there are very few who know about him.
yes,
But
yes.
such a such a great mind, such a what a mind to write so courageously. It is amazing. So that is why I think I brought up this point. Thank you.
and for the students, I want to share something about Padma's what do you say, approach or thesis on what is Indian literature, you know. And she's brought some insights into our syllabus framing also, where we have dropped this, we are favoring the title Indian Literature instead of Indian Writing in English. And I think you could say a bit about that, Padma, because they need to know that. And we have this lovely article also by P.P. Ravindran, Genealogies of Indian Literature. So in that, the sum and substance of that article is that there are many Indias. So there's no grid through which you can put text and say this is Indian literature or this is representative of India. So the India inhabited by Burma is different from the India inhabited by Anita Desai. So that's the whole idea. So maybe Padma, you can, with your knowledge, you could share a little more on that.
Thank you, Preeti. That's something that I would love to talk about. It's just that sometimes when we study, we go into these linguistic cocoons. So we kind of look at Indian writing in English as one group and Indian writing in Tamil as one group. And again, it was very interesting that when Soumyaneel started, he said he's an Indian writer writing in Bengali. He did not say he's a Bengali writer. I don't know if he's here, but that was very interesting. The thing is, when we look at Indian literatures as an entirety, it becomes possible for us to trace exactly what you were talking about. You were talking about the absence of translations in many languages, and absence of translation also means, to some extent at least, an absence of influence between the literature written in one language and another. But it is possible actually to trace similarities across languages. So if you take a movement like modernism, it affected almost all languages in India. The Progressive Writers Association has a wing in all languages, and I know that 2 years back, I don't think they had a meeting during the pandemic, but in Pondicherry 2 years back, the Tamil Progressive Writers Association met, and they had their discussions, and they had they had theater performances and others. So it's when you break out of this linguistic cocoons, it's possible for us to look at connections across languages. So this is something Meenakshi Mukherjee also does in her text in that book, Realism and Reality. If you look at the first novels in all languages, when you look at Pratapa Mudaliar Charitram, Indulekha, Padmavati Charitram, Yamuna Pariyatan, you'll find some kind of similarity. And if you look at Kalki and Visa Khandekar, you will find some similarities. In fact, I come from a family whose mother tongue is Tamil, but which was settled in Maharashtra and Pune. And I remember my father telling me that for a long time, people used to consider that Visa Khandekar was a Tamilian who just happened to have a strange surname. Because Yayati, as soon as it was published, was serialized in Tamil magazines in translation. So somewhere along the line, when we say Indian writing in English as separate from Indian writing in other languages, we're kind of not looking at those continuities. And that's why I think we are trying to move out of this kind of a binary and moving towards Indian literatures. So it's possible for us to look at similarities, differences, and the nuances of each. So even Dalit writing, it's possible to look at Bama and possible to look at any other Dalit writer, Joseph Makwan in Gujarati, as similar but different. But you need a platform for doing that. That's why this thing came. Shruti?
There's difference, it is different. So I just wanted to show this volume that I have, Masterpieces of Indian Literature. Have you seen this one?
This is K.M.
By
George's.
K.M. George. K.M. George, yeah. So what do you think about an exercise exercise like this, Padma, because it's brought out by the National Book Trust.
It was brought out by the National Book Trust, and KM George actually took about 11 to 12 years to complete the project. There are, I think, 3 volumes, and there is one bibliography volume. Yeah, it's a fantastic, monumental work. And if you look at the entries, I think there's a very neat, it means cut across a lot of traditions within different languages. Something like that would really help. I think it came out around the time when I was doing my research, and I kind of relied very heavily on it. But I know that when my students are doing their research, they also are able to rely quite a lot on it. Like we used to have those master plots, no, that 12-volume thing. This is something like that. It's a fantastic work. Of course, we need to add on to it, but it's a fabulous work. Something that I think we need things like that. Shiva Shankari came up with something like that, one for each region: south, east, north, and west. Translations of short stories and other literary works from languages belonging to different regions. So I think there has been work.
That was Knit India.
Knit India through literature, yes.
Right.
Knit India through literature, yes.
I think there
is in DC Books has brought out in Malayalam more than 200 novels. I think master plots and criticism on it, 2 volumes. All the award-winning books will be the. This is in English. This what I spoke about is in Malayalam.
Oh, but if criticism is available, that's one major problem actually researchers face.
Yeah, that is in Malayalam, but
yeah,
so
that's the thing. But Soumyaneel, when you presented your references, there were Bengali references.
Yes.
That was really nice.
Yes.
The only thing is, if that would be made available in English, it would be greater.
In our time, it was so difficult. When I started with research on Kamala Das, and I found her poems were not inadequate. All her material I found in her short stories, which then was not at all in translation. So I had to drop the whole thing, right? I mean, I did. It was because all her stuff comes only in her short stories. The best comes in her short stories, and they're all in Malayalam. So today, I mean, and I was not competent enough to do the translations then.
No, critical work, for instance, when we speak of Indian critical movements, I mean, everybody speaks of nativism. I think Sahitya Academy also conducted a seminar on nativism. But the original essay by Balchandran Emade, which spearheaded that movement, that full essay is not really available to us in English translation. There are references to it here and there, but it's not fully available. There is that huge lacuna, which Ayyappa Pandit's work.
I think it is much better now than it was now. When we were doing.
But critical material, see, what is happening is that as a student of English literature, I can work on a Tamil writer or a Bengali writer and publish that work in English. But there are Bengali criticism. There is Bengali criticism available. There is criticism in Tamil available. But those are not available in English. So when we go in as researchers, we are kind of handicapped there. We're not able to get as complete a picture as we would like. And very few of us, let's face it, we're not so competent enough, or know other people who are competent enough. So that's another thing. I mean, many of us are
some American poet, she told me, "What, you don't know she asked me if I could help her translate the works of Balamani Amma. Okay. And I said, I am not competent enough. Not know your mother tongue, she asked me. Okay. I mean, that was what that's what they feel, because we are a country of many languages. Okay, I speak one at home. Outside I speak something else. It's very difficult for us to master all this.
Speak many languages at home, like me.
Yes, yeah, you do. But we are all not masters of any particular. That is why that's the problem. The translations you have to know.
But I don't know if the others also feel this way. I feel there was a generation which was comfortable with this multilingualism. Like my parents and my grandparents, they were their English was really good. I mean, they had the good fortune of going to my dad at least had a good fortune of going to an English medium school. He learned Tamil at home. He was perfectly at home with English, Tamil, and Marathi. And there was never a question of if you were talking in one, you would not talk in the other. It was always this and that. So if many of us might have grown up with that this and that condition, so it's easier for us to jump between languages. But increasingly, there's a tendency to believe that if you're learning in one language, you should not learn in the other. That's a little dangerous. And that's why when you have a concept like Indian literatures, I think it helps. It
No,
helps
but Hindi
build
itself, if you look at Red Samadhi, I believe she has used a lot of Urdu and a
dialect.
whole lot of languages there. I mean, whatever has come in, no,
Dialect.
as like that. So I think it is. I think multilingualism is perfectly all right for a country like India, and we can all remain happy instead of, I mean, division.
And I just want to make a point about not being able to get enough information on something that is written in a different language. And this is something that we can learn from these indigenous people. They are very anti-research in that sense, anti-arrogance of the researcher, and the conquest through research. So there is this. I was told that there's this Native American novel. I forget the name, where it's part of the lines are deliberately written in Cree. So the author wants to make a statement that if you don't understand, you don't understand.
I think even Viti Hemera's Whale Rider has full sections written in the Maori
Yeah, yeah,
Wangara
it
language.
does have a lot of
Wangari words, yeah.
yeah.
A certain professor told me it's high time we taught our language to the rest of the world. Okay. Because he writes Tamil words as it is in all his critical work, he said like that. It's high time. Why would we learn about seed kist and other things? Let us let us teach Tamil to the rest of the world too. They are also critical terms, he said, with respect to Tinai. Yes.
So if we don't have any more questions or observations, we can actually go on.
Students have not, none of the students have responded today, research students.
Could I congratulate Soumyaneel again? I think he did a
Yes.
fantastic job.
Yes,
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Soumyaneel, I mean, you took us into Bengal and just loved your presentation.
Thank you, ma'am.
And please convey our thanks to Debashri for bringing you on board. Yeah.
Yeah, of course I will. Yeah.
So yes, Satyapriya, you can wind up.
Shall I start vote of thanks?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Padma ma'am, for your excellent portrayal of Jnanpith Award and its history, and about Grandpix Foundation online forms and selection process and comparison between works of different languages and how they select the work for awards. And of course, at last, Indian Writing English contribution. Thank you so much. It was excellent portrayal of Jnanpith Award, ma'am. And thank you, Srilata ma'am and Jagannathan sir. Thank you, Preeti ma'am, because for in tandem, so we could extend our knowledge further. And thank you, Soumyaneel, for for the portrayal of your religious prejudice, discrimination, casteism, survival, and the portrayal of subalternity about the Bengali cultures, and your novel, how you portray about the Gana Devata, excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody. Bye. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thanks for the invitation. I thoroughly enjoyed my time. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And on behalf of Intandem, I want to thank Nancy for organizing the meet. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, teachers.
Thank you, Satyapriya, for anchoring the show. Bye-bye.
Thank you.